Okay, day 93. This is version 2 of Braverman, Haiti, and me. So I had an episode this morning. I talked about Haiti and just how these covert activities are used in a small country as an example that's easily understandable, like it was a small state. I'm not sure even the size of Haiti. I think it's like Rhode Island size, and maybe a little bit bigger, maybe New Jersey type size. And everyone immediately, I talked about the abduction and the organ harvesting and so forth. Everyone immediately hit me with, how about Ted Gunderson? How about the people being abducted in the United States? You know, he talked about that, for a long time. He talked about, 100,000 to 400,000 kids getting abducted every year. How do you know there isn't organ harvesting, et cetera, et cetera? Yes. Okay. So last night I went through all the Ted Gunderson stuff again for the fifth or sixth time. And yes, he did a great job. For all those who don't know Ted Gunderson, he was a 30-year FBI agent hired by J. Edgar Hoover, had 700 agents working for him in the Los Angeles division, extremely well respected within the FBI, then became a private investigator and investigated Fort Bragg, where they were sending drugs in the body cavities of dead soldiers in these body bags. Again, these body bags in Haiti coming back to the U.S. for, U.S. medical. I still think they're coming back into Fort Bragg for drug trafficking. One good thing about the CIA is they always do the same thing over and over and over, so they're very predictable. They change things a little bit, but usually it's let's do the Jeffrey McDonald thing again. Okay, great, we'll do that again. So yeah, I definitely think the people coming back in the body bags through Duke Medical Center are some of the bags have been tagged cholera, and those are the ones that are going to have the drugs in them. Okay, for instance. But to get to the larger point here of Ted Gunderson, I just don't want to bring in the United States too much and talk about counterinsurgency in the United States too much, even because it can get complicated so quickly. I could say, oh, well, the entry points are El Paso, and then Las Cruces, and then San Ysidro, and then the one in Fort Huachuca or whatever it is, close to the border there. And I can say where the training camps are for ISIS, and I can say the Texas to Chicago line is what they're trying to protect, and using the people as human shields like they did in Aleppo, in Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, etc. But what ends up happening is I get into a lot of regional arguments across 50 different states. I'd rather keep it to this kind of thing that people don't know a lot about Haiti, and so that it's kind of serves as an example that you can easily understand, and then you can apply it to your own state, if you see what I mean. So it's just kind of this model, this neutral model for all 50 states. Haiti's just a model for maybe a small state in the United States, if that makes any sense. And then you guys can do the research in your own state about, vaccinations and microloans. These were payday loans in the United States. And you can also look at these, cadaver graveyards that have been discovered around Chicago, New Jersey, etc. If that makes any sense. Okay. So yes, I agree totally. The point I've tried to make through this whole series is that it's not Hillary, it's not Bill Clinton, it's not George Bush. It's more Kissinger and CIA, and this has happened over a long time. Ted Gunderson says, yes, Bill Clinton's 4 bodyguards got kill shots at, Waco. Yes, but it wasn't because Bill Clinton's evil. It was because they were about ready to expose the Mena airport thing, and that, according to national security, that's why the Mena airport had to be in there. That's why we did the guns for drugs deal at Iran-Contra. That's why the 4 guys got the kill shots at Waco. It wasn't because Bill Clinton's horrible and driving around and getting, because the Arkansas troopers were driving around and getting him sexual liaisons. So it was the Mena airport thing why they got killed. And he talks about OKC and how there was at least 11 people or so on that team with Timothy McVeigh. He talks about how Timothy McVeigh was ex-special forces, how Timothy McVeigh was the the patsy and so forth, and how the bomb couldn't have possibly been ammonium nitrate. All those things are true. But it was critical for the CIA to blow up OKC to create this need for counterterrorism. They had the thing at the World Trade Center with a car bomb, didn't really take, they didn't really get the changes they wanted to U.S. law. Once OKC happened, that's when they got the national security law in. So Hillary was just a vehicle to get to, this is, again, the CIA, through the counterterrorism division of the FBI, infiltrating the FBI. So Gunderson's, right about all those things. Where Ted Gunderson kind of goes off track is that he bought into all the Illuminati stuff. He was a great researcher and so forth, but you got to understand that Kissinger is telling Zbigniew Brzezinski, the guy who gave the stingers to Osama bin Laden, that he's Polish royalty, to get his buy-in in the Carter administration. He doesn't. Nobody really believes Zbigniew Brzezinski is ex-Polish royalty and all that Illuminati crap. It's just a structure for Kissinger to manipulate the different people that are involved by appealing to their sense of self-worth. So I just wanted to. That's where Ted kind of went off the track. Was he right about the abductions? Is there this kind of secret society that does these abductions? Yes. Do they have these satanic rituals that they teach them? Yes. Does anybody at the CIA really believe in that stuff? No. They just give them that stuff to perpetuate. So everyone wants to make it that these people are satanic priests at the highest levels. They're not. They're just pragmatists trying to get the most they can for their investors. Okay. So so here's Haiti. Let's say this could be any state in the United States. Okay. This could be whatever sanctuary city we have. Could be Port-au-Prince. We put all of our people inside Port-au-Prince, and then if Trump tries to come and get us at Port-au-Prince, we put the women and children in front of us, and that's how we defend ourselves. So I just wanted to use Haiti kind of as an example. Now, anytime I see body bags, I think of Jeffrey McDonald, and I think of putting the drugs in the body cavities of those people, and you can send them back to Duke Medical and say we're studying cholera and we're looking for better vaccines. See, that's why I tie the body bags to vaccines. You can always say, hey, I need to study the dead bodies in order to come up with a better vaccine. Haiti is the reason why, if you look at the new parliament that they're trying to put in Haiti, they're all drug dealers. I mean, Moise, the drug dealers or money launderers, one of the two. And you need a landing point. If you're running a drug operation, and let's say Colombia, okay? Colombia is about 4 hours directly south of Haiti. You need a landing point. And again, you want to compartmentalize the chain. You don't want somebody going from all the way to Colombia and then, having an audit trail all the way to New York or all the way to Chicago, and then selling the drugs actually on the street, because then that ties the two together. You want to break it up into these compartments. So if somebody does get caught, you say, oh, there's a drug dealer flying a small plane from Cartagena to Moise's banana plantation here and landing it, well, I don't know where his banana plantation is, maybe over in here. You catch him, DEA catches him, what a great bust. But you don't endanger the whole supply chain. It's important to break up the supply chain. That's the point I'm making. And you're going to find that's how the CIA does things. Even in they call them compartments, a special compartmentalized information facility, a SCIF, is where you're allowed to talk about different things. And there's special access programs within the communications of a SCIF. So it's completely walled off. The people doing this part of the chain from Haiti to wherever they're landing, maybe there's an airstrip out by Mirabalais, because they wouldn't want a lot of plane traffic to be seen from the ground. But that whole program is going to be an operation, Colombia to Haiti, airlift, and there's going to be some kind of humanitarian cover for that. Colombia giving aid to earthquake victims, and then the Haiti to Duke Medical Center thing is going to be, a whole separate operation. And most of the people in the operation are going to think, hey, we're trying to solve cholera here. We're trying to come up with new vaccines. They have no idea that the body cavities of these body bags are stuffed with cocaine. So I just wanted to explain that, the reason why you want to compartmentalize when you're doing an illicit activity. it's going to be the same thing for the mines. You don't. This is the Roach Motel. The miners don't understand this right now, but once you're in this mine, you don't ever go back to regular society. You go to the prison and then you're harvested. It's a one-way trip to Palookaville, as they say. But the miners don't understand that. The other workers, when they see somebody get hauled off to the slaughterhouse, they think, oh, I don't want to, make this guy mad because I'll get hauled off to the slaughterhouse as well. And that's how you keep everybody working. And you don't tell these people that, just the same way the Nazis never told the people that were doing all their work, the slave labor, that they were going off to Auschwitz. You don't want to tell them that. You want to just have people disappear. And a lot of people have sent me things on Palantir and said, you need a whole slide for just Palantir for all the connections they have. Yes, software companies don't just grow out of the grass in Silicon Valley and all of a sudden, you've got 50 years worth of intelligence, satellite connection and all these connections. No, of course it came from NSA, and of course it was developed on tax dollars, and of course it was the precursor to PRISM, which Snowden talked about. And then what the CIA does is they commercialize everything. So, this may burst some bubbles here, but you're going to find, everybody knows Larry Summers stole Facebook from the Winklevosses, and the whole Sorkin thing with Facebook, with putting Zuckerberg in there. Maybe there's a small group of people that think that Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook. And Sheryl Sandberg and the whole gang. It was all Larry Summers' operation there. But things like Google and things like Google especially. It was from the very beginning a CIA operation to control the internet. I mean, I don't think. Now, Sergey Brin and Larry Page might not have known that's why they were getting funding. When Beschloss writes him the first $100,000 check, I'm sure they thought, well, this is weird. Andy Beschloss is sitting down with us and writing us a $100,000 check. This is great. But sure enough, when it gets traction, they're going to bring Eric Schmidt in as your economic spy to control where the thing is going. And you got to let it get some market traction before you end up, inserting somebody in there. And they had similar projects at all the other search engines, and then they just drop the ones off that don't get market traction. But Google was definitely the fair-haired child because it had funding. It had CIA funding. And the idea was to have all sorts of kinds of data. The reason why Google's so great about offering services is it feeds this system. And then the other piece here is NORAD. I think I've talked about this earlier, but I think the smartest, Kissinger maybe, I think one of the smartest people that has ever lived, but maybe also the most ruthless, but I think James Clapper is a close second. James Clapper did all the kind of bombing and I don't want to say that makes him a genius, but kind of the aerial targeting in Vietnam, and then he went on to become a geospatial expert about locating targets through satellite, through reconnaissance, combining multiple data sources to figure out who the bad guy is and who the good guy is. And he really is the genius behind this whole thing. I mean, and again, it's kind of one of those things like admiring a Mercedes-Benz, knowing that they were a key contractor for the Holocaust. You can't really say that the purposes being used now are so great, but the ingeniousness of using the dust and using the cube satellites, the small handheld satellites, and all this geolocation tied in with this, so they know where you are 24 hours a day. Your volunteers or your informants, that you know where your drug supply chain is at all times, you know where the enemy is at all times, you know where the key political targets are at all times. So it really is, and as I've mentioned before, it really was initially used to do terrorists, but then they did this family and friends. This is kind of like the Michael Hayden extensions to, hey, we should do family and friends. It's kind of where it takes kind of the Himmler turn, saying, well, if the terrorist is a bad guy, then we should probably use metadata to get rid of all their family, and then, well, yeah, probably friends too. Now with Michael Morell and Hillary, we've gone into this area, which is my enemies, my journalists, political enemies, et cetera, or people such as myself. Arms, drugs, and sex networks were always a part of this tracking from the beginning. But this is the new twist. And this started about 2010. When I came out against McCabe at JTTF, that's when this program, I think, kind of got launched when Petraeus came in at the CIA. It was about the same time, and that's when my life really changed. So anyway, I've said enough about Rubicon. Again, I think it's a compartmentalized operation, and it's when the Marines figure out that, I was actually protecting a child abduction and a kidnapping scheme, and people who were very sick were being taken to a location and their organs were being harvested. That's where I think you end up with, oh my God, and soldiers, this is the whole suicide problem with the 22 people a day, is when they start realizing, connecting the dots and realizing that they were part of that DynCorp operation, that's when you have these, bouts of depression. You notice when during the operations, when they're doing their job or slightly after that, they don't have those psychological problems. It's later on when they start connecting the dots. So, and by the way, call suicide hotline. I don't want to make any vets push further. I think it's better that you deal with it, but rather than pushing it under the rug. But pushing it under the rug is not the solution for the world opinion. What I'm saying is this DynCorp white helmet thing is just done over and over again. It used to be the blue helmets in Kosovo, and there's a whole system of corrupting, of small incremental corruptions of the police forces to push this type of thing with the trafficking and the organ harvesting. Now, here's my suggestion is, any students of Braverman's, he's going to have a class on Friday at Ethics in Government, and I would just ask him, is it true there's this guy on the internet that says that the earthquake was down in Port-au-Prince, and he says that all the USAID money was spent for a port, a prison, a new university, industrial park, a new airport, and a new port, and money is being spent on a gold mine up there and improving the port for the cruise ships. Instead of bringing them in at Labadee, they're going to them in at Cape Hatien. Is that true? And then a hospital about 25 miles over a major mountain in the middle of the country in a very remote area. And then they built a 5-star hotel near Port-au-Prince. Is that true? Do you agree first with those facts, Mr. Braverman? That'd be a good question for any student. And I think that's a fair question on Friday for Braverman. It's like, is that true? And see what he says. And I would also ask him, do you know that the guy who is Moise, the current president, first of all, do you know that ever since you went in there 5 years ago, that they basically never had an election? They had one with Martailly right after the earthquake, and then they dissolved parliament for basically 4 years so that Martailly was in de facto dictator. And then they put in his place, they put in a hand-picked drug dealer who owns a plantation where they fly drugs in from Colombia. And they're using body bags to send the drugs from Colombia to Duke Medical Center. I think those are all fair questions. If you're teaching ethics in government, those are all fair questions. Again, I don't want to take the focus off Monica Petersen because she's the focal point of this. This is the real Braverman in the story, the real person that finds their ethics, that's in the middle of this horrible castle, the Hamlet type thing. You're trapped in this castle of evil, or at least the whole system being evil. I'm not saying the people are evil, but the whole system is evil. And she does the right thing. She writes the master's thesis and says, hey, this is Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and Toto pulls back the curtain and says, oh my gosh, this is a wicked witch operation, and she's murdered. So I could talk about a lot of the different people. A lot of people have said, what about her, what about her, what about her, and all these different people. I focus on a few cases so people really get to know that these are real cases, and these people are exposing a real system that is corrupted. Okay. So, and Digicel, I mentioned her. Well, I won't mention it. That's why I keep going back to Jessica Dillo Crisp, because she's the one who said the police department's raped me. And it was right before a major event. And you're going to find the same thing coming up with the Super Bowl. Same thing coming up in Houston in the Super Bowl. You're going to start seeing girls, you're going to start seeing more abductions, and you're going to start seeing more deaths, the bodies afterward. So abductions before the Super Bowl, and you're going to start seeing the bodies, missing afterward, or starting to wash up afterward. So again, if everyone in this scenario was innocent, why the macabre artwork on your wall? Why the macabre cakes where naked women are having hearts cut out of them? Why the lack of reporting from the NGOs on what happens after these major disasters? No reporting on after the tsunami in Thailand. You know, this should be a database with every child's name and every child's picture, and a blog for every child, how they're doing. We could do that, you know, and we just use their first names to create anonymity. And you don't have to, locate them down to an address. You can just say, they live in Phuket, or wherever. And then I think we got to track the hearts better, and find out where these are coming from. Now, there was probably an audit trail here. I'd love to see it. If anybody wants to produce that information. But this is the stuff that really gets me, is when you got everybody toasting. This is Martailly, the kind of the de facto dictator for 5 years in Haiti. And he's being toasted by Sean Penn and Nemkova. She runs Happy Hearts, which is kind of an odd link to this. And they're all toasting each other when the people of Haiti say 2 to 5% of the money came through. So I'm just using this as a microcosm. I know this exists other places, and I know people get frustrated with me because I talk Haiti, Haiti, Haiti. But I'm just trying to do like Trump with a little needle and poke this balloon and let it pop, because this is a front. This is a social justice front to a heart operation. Okay, I promised I would talk about the 650,000 emails, and somebody said, well, was it $1,000 for every email? Or a dollar for every email? Is that how they figured out the bribe? That's funny. But yes, McCabe is still sitting on the emails, and there is the 19 Gmail accounts, and yes, I still think it unlocks the case. I'll leave it there. I've went way long here, but I had to kind of respond to a lot of folks with a lot of comments.